And if you'd like to write that, and if it's okay with you, to share them, say, through Liz's Facebook page or something like that. And if you don't have it, we'll find out how to get it to you. Please feel free to do that. All right. The first panelist here is David Rickester. And, well, you've all been introduced. So, you have to. You go. You want to stand up?
I can do that. First, I want to say I really value the education I got here, the introduction to who Jesus was, and a lot of good Bible teaching that I received here. And that was a good foundation for me as I went on in life. So I value that a lot. When it comes to Adventism and the organization, as I grew in my faith, I started getting a better idea of God's unconditional love for me. That it wasn't conditional upon how I happened to act that day or that week or whatever. And it's a long story, but in the 80s, it came down. I was a part of a church that when someone came in and started asking questions about God's unconditional love for them, I would answer them what I felt was true from the scriptures. And I was later called in and asked why I was speaking these things. And I don't think it was against what we were taught in the Adventist church, but it wasn't emphasized. And so because I was emphasizing that, I was called in and told that you're welcome to stay here and just be a part of the church, but just don't say anything about what you believe. And that was very difficult. I knew Jesus personally, had a relationship with him. I couldn't not say something. So that was kind of what it came down to, is this type of thing we're doing tonight wasn't encouraged. So I really appreciate this. This is healthy for us to be able to talk about our differences, how we may believe certain things differently or different emphasis on those things. That's a healthy thing. But at that time, that wasn't allowed where I was at. So I had to say, I'm sorry, I can't support this as an organization anymore. And at that point, then, there was several years where I didn't go to church at all. Finally found a place where I began to be able to feel more comfortable and grow in my faith again. So it's been a long time since I've been a part of the denomination organization, but I still value and appreciate what I did learn here, what I did get started in my relationship with Jesus. But to me, the question is, do you know Jesus? Do you have a vital relationship with him? And is that what you're relying on? Not just I agree to a certain set of doctrines all the time. And those will come. But in life you may have different times where you learn different things and you believe different things. But if you have Jesus and you're focusing on that vital relationship with him, not just about him, with him, then that's the bottom line. So you can be part of an organization and have that, then it doesn't, I don't believe that that's the organization is the point. I believe your personal relationship with Jesus is the point. So.
Thanks. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I ask people frequently to say what you. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm going to ask this of David and others, or I'd like to. What does it mean to have a relationship with Jesus? That's an abstraction. What does it mean?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's a difference between being taught that there is a God,
Yeah.
and being taught that there's a Jesus, and being taught that there's a Holy Spirit,
Mm-hmm.
and actually entering into communicating with them. One way we communicate is through the scriptures, obviously, but it's more important than that. It's also through prayer, and it becomes real and alive, not just a concept, where I'm actually communicating with the Lord.
So, and you felt that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you
Not early on. It
Yeah.
took years for that to develop.
Do you have an instance where that happened?
Well, I can say where it began. I was
Uh-huh.
baptized at 12 years old in the Adventist church downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And I really meant that I wanted to follow Jesus at that point. I didn't understand what that meant. It wasn't real personal yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd say through the years and when I went to college, that grew deeper and over time became more personal. It wasn't any one all of a sudden aha moment. It was
Sure.
developed over time. And you get to be friends with someone, that friendship grows over time. And so with me, it was a growth over time.
Okay. Th- Thanks.
I'm just going to add a little bit on
You're
to
welcome. Wherever you'd like to be.
knowing God. And, I've come to have these moments where I feel like you have this somewhat unexpected spiritual connection. A lot of times those are out if you're one that, I think many people could relate to is earlier this year there was a huge solar storm and was not super late. It was about 11 o'clock at night, and my daughters had gone to bed. And I looked out the window and saw that they were flaring. One of them was 11, and my other daughter's a high school student here. And I grabbed him and I said, "We got to go look at the lights." And I pulled him out of bed. I said, "This may be a once-in-a-lifetime experience." And we drove down to where there was no light pollution. And we all just stood there and just like, you feel like you want to tear up. And my daughter's like, it's like God's talking to us. And it's just like, and so you have these connections that I think there's so many different ways that God can speak to you, and you just have to listen to it. So that wasn't what I kind of off tangent a little bit from some of my experience with Adventism. I grew up Adventist. I am a multi-generational Adventist. I come from Loma Linda heritage, and I had a big family. I'm a Jutsi. If you have been to Loma Linda, you probably have heard the name. My grandfather was a physician, very involved in the church and in the medical school, and my uncles are all doctors, and it's there's a family tradition of being part of the Adventist church. My grandmother would sit out on her balcony at Loma Linda and just stare out at the smoggy lights, and she'd say, "This is the most beautiful view," and it was because it was the Adventist Valley of Loma Linda. And so, this was part of my growing up experience was in the church, and I had a very accepting, loving family. Most of my cousins are no longer part of the church. There's a couple of us that are still Adventists. It was not for lack of support. And this has been a struggle that we've discussed a lot. My siblings I wouldn't say they're not Adventists, but they don't attend church. And we have a lot of spiritual discussions. And I myself, we were, a few years ago, we were in Loma Linda, and my husband was in dental school there 8 years ago. And I realized that the Loma Linda University Church can be the loneliest place in the world with thousands of people, and nobody talked to me. And I had a bit of I stopped going to church. I was like, this does not matter to me. And I had a very deep relationship with God. And my kids did go to Adventist school. They went to Loma Linda Academy, which also was a bit of an up and down experience for them. And there was a lot of this, the kids there, and the kids everywhere. Kids are kids, but you have this back and forth, and the kids are getting really discouraged and turned away. And I am not really considering myself Adventist. I believe in the Sabbath. I believe in, and I just kind of had stepped away a little bit. And when we moved back here, about that time, my sister was with her now husband, who is Catholic, and we've had a lot of deep spiritual conversations. And he said, "I cannot be a Catholic because I don't agree with every single point of Catholicism." And I said, "I don't agree with every single point of Adventism." Yeah. Okay. I said, "I don't necessarily agree with every single point of Adventism." But then I opened the 28 beliefs. I was like, let's just look at this here. And I was like, oh, well, yeah. And, oh, yeah, actually, yeah, I do agree with that. And actually, yeah, I do agree with that. What I really, with the self-reflection, I realized I have a hard time with a lot of the personal cultural interpretations that tend to be passed down and passed And that's when you miss the point of, just like Terry's saying, is Jesus. And when you open the Bible and you say, this, Jesus' words say, this is the command I give you. Love your Father. Love the Father with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. And love your neighbor as yourself. And when you start doing those things, the rest falls into place. And it's been pretty cool being a part of this school I've had a lot of deep conversations with my own kids. My own kids were actually, my son and daughter were both baptized last year. And they were baptized in the Adventist church. When they came to be baptized, when my daughter came to me and said, I want to be baptized. She said, I want to be baptized in Jesus. Do I have to be baptized as an Adventist? And I said, absolutely not. You are wanting to give your heart to God, and you're wanting to give your heart to Jesus. That just makes my soul sing. And they had this, she came out of the water. They were up at Fairy Lake. She came up sobbing. And she has, and so I don't know that I'm doing everything right, but it's not up to me, it's up to God. And I just pray that I can be a spiritual influence in the lives of the kids here. I want them to come to me with the hard questions. When we hiked Mount Ellis this year, I know the question was how many times we went to Mount Ellis. I went up to Mount Ellis this year, and I took a group of about 20 kids down through Little Ellis. So we went scrambled up the trail up there, and then a group that wanted to go down the trail on the way back. So I ended up with about 20 kids. And man, those kids started talking about spirituality. And those are the chances you have to, we have to allow them to ask the questions and be a representative of Christ so that they can get answers that may not fit into the box that they're supposed to, because it's about that relationship with Jesus. And that's, if you don't have that as center, it's just not there. That's what matters.
I remain really interested in. I'm sorry. I remain interested in everybody in the audience and here as well about that abstraction, a relationship with Jesus. What does that mean? And I believe it's deeply individualistic. It really is. One of my favorite books I've read in the last several years, and I'm not recommending it because it's written for people who. It's called The Bible and Poetry. It's published by New York Review of Books. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. I'm not recommending it, but it has a paragraph in here it's technical, but it has this. We know from the very first verse of the book that Job feared God, meaning upright, avoiding evil, and I'm on the wrong page. I'm sorry. Here it is. Okay. Yeah, Job is my favorite book. And part of the reason why is because when you were asked to recognize God, what Job gets is a lesson in nature. Do you know where the mountain goats are born? Do you know where the whales are? Do you know Leviathan? Do you know, can you catch Leviathan? Everything is about nature. And that's how Job was convinced of God, is through that. Anyway, here it is. Biblical poetry suggests, above all, that everything in the Christian religion is strange, foreign. And this is not so only because it comes from another culture and from another region of the world. It is foreign to what man is, or what he has become. Created in the image or likeness of God, he acquired by disobedience a second nature which trembles before that which exceeds his intelligence and his being. In order to approach God, he needs God to approach him through grace. Simone Weil said that it is our desire that brings God to us. We have to want it. It's good. The natural person does the things outside this gentle constraint.
friend, my mom, who came into the church. Went to some meetings, and the evangelist came to their house and said, "So, do you want to be baptized?" And my grandpa said, "No." And he goes, "Oh, well, then we need to pray." And so they prayed, and they said, "Okay, so do you want to be baptized now?" And they said, "No." He goes, "Okay, well, let's get down and pray again." And this must have happened like 4 or 5 times. And finally, my grandpa said, "Well, okay." And so all the kids and my grandparents all got baptized. And my mom went to the movie Saturday afternoon and was talking to her friends and said, so I got baptized today. And they said, "Really? Well, that's cool. What church?" And she goes, um, um, "Well, we go to church on Saturday." "Oh, you're Jew." "Oh, no, it's a way longer name than that." And I mean, you guys. And then my grandparents sent them all to Campion Academy, and that's where Mom and Dad met. And so, I mean, it was weird, but hey, it worked. And so, but I guess I start with that was because, we all have our stories, like you were talking about. And I remember being here, and we would always go four-wheeling on Sabbath afternoons. But for some people, that was the wrong thing to do. And I would ask my friends, I said, "So, hey, we're going up in the mountains this afternoon. Do you guys want to go?" "Well, I'd really like to, Penny, but my mom won't let me." "Well, why?" "Well, your dad always gets stuck, and we have to work digging ourselves out." And so, and we did, but what they weren't remembering too, what the parents maybe, was the fact that we would get to the top of these mountains, and Dad would look up there and he would go, tears in his eyes, and say, "Isn't it gorgeous up here? Look at what God has given us. This is beautiful. I just want to take everybody that I can up here." But because we were digging on the Sabbath, and it was just like, where's the relationship? The relationship is huge. And I still consider myself an Adventist, but I do not go to the Adventist church. I go to a Sunday-keeping church who believes in the Bible. I keep Sabbath every week. And the church that we have found teaches straight from the Bible. I don't agree with everything, just like we've talked about. But they are so full of grace. They have got 3 sober living houses that they help. If you see someone in a suit, they're visiting because they don't know it's okay to just wear jeans and a t-shirt. The pastor is up in front talking. And, well, I'll take it back. There was the youth pastor got up and he said, "So everybody, well, let's welcome Pastor Charlie up." Charlie gets up and he goes, "Jonathan, if you ever call me Pastor Charlie again, you're fired." Kind of joking, but not really. And then he said, "I am a sinner, just like everybody else. I am Charlie." And that's all. I had never in my life heard of that. I remember growing up, and the conference president was up here, and the pastors were here, parents were here, and we were here. And, that's just the way it was, and if we didn't do everything just right, I mean, does anybody remember that you could go wading up to your knees in the creek, but you couldn't go swimming? All these different rules. I mean, where in the tarnation did that come from? Is it that we're not supposed to have fun on Sabbath? We're just supposed to be like this? I don't know, you guys. I don't have the answers, but I do know that Easter Sunday, we were standing in the foyer, um, and there were some friends that go to the Adventist church that came that day because they really, really enjoyed the service. And their response when I said, "You guys, I am still wholeheartedly an Adventist. I am fed here. I am fed." And this guy looks at me and he goes, "They feed you here?" I said, "Spiritually." oh, yeah. Okay, I was just thinking, I guess I'm hungry. Anyway, but I guess the bottom line is I believe with everything in me that we are to show grace to everyone. You guys, we have got people coming to this church that are doing everything they can to keep out of prison. They are in their sober living houses. They are at the bottom. They have had a really hard time, and they are in the pews with us. They are right sitting next to us, and they are loved, and they are accepted, and they are brought in. And Easter Sunday, they had a beautiful service, and I just found out last weekend that on the 26th that they are having a baptism of 30 people that gave their hearts to the Lord that day. And they probably have, I don't know, 5 or 6 of these a year, Tim? Okay, maybe 3 or 4, I don't know. But many times the pastor will say on the day that they are baptizing people, "I don't want anyone in their seats when someone goes down and is baptized into the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost." He said, "I do not want any golf clapping." He said, "Heaven is rejoicing over these souls. You get up and you whistle and you clap and you praise the Lord for these people and these souls." And if anybody came dry and they want to leave wet, we have everything you need. And it's amazing. And you guys, I am not putting any other denomination or anything above anyone else. I just know that we are being fed and that we are to share our testimony. And it's not about all the rules. It's about my relationship with Jesus, and how am I sharing that? Am I loving the person next to me? Am I caring about the person next to me? Am I giving them what they need when I see that there's a need? Am I reaching out? What am I doing? What are we here for? And so, I don't know. That's my testimony.
If you want to see the opposite of what we've just heard, you can go on a site called barelyadventist.com. Do any of you ever look at that? There's a question there about why aren't you in the Adventist church anymore? One of my favorites is because the potluck started and we went outside. But there are all kinds of ways to see how people have been hurt in some society or another. It happens in all societies, but people apply it to the one they're in. How many of you here were baptized before there were 28 fundamental beliefs? That's the church I belong to. We were an anti-creed church, viciously anti-creed for a long, long time. And when those creedal statements came in, there were legal reasons they had to have them in order to keep getting accredited as schools and all kinds of stuff. But it really, really changed the relationship a lot of people felt that they had with the organization. It suddenly became formalized in a new way. And I've read and seen the effect of it on people who can't take all 28 beliefs very easily, the 6,000-year earth, things like that. Now, I'm a little apprehensive, but I'm also eager. Okay, you feel that way sometimes about hearing hearing what you might say about your own relation to this question, about how your own relation to the church, along with your personal life or your evolution as a human, um, has developed. I know there are people who are adamant about Adventist doctrine and their tremendous importance about getting ready for the second coming, and others who have different perspectives. Does anybody want to make a response to this? And we have a microphone if you do. Mel, I'm so glad to see you. I know it's hard to hear, but you look so good. Man, I drove your Jeep so many times, I really resonated with what you said. And got stuck in the mud too, yeah. Are there responses to this? Yes, Cheryl.
Baptized when I was 12.
And you are whom? I'm sorry.
Sam Newby.
Oh.
My mom cooked for everybody. We did. I loved watching your plays up here on the stage.
Yeah, keep it up. Keep the mic up higher,
Okay,
closer.
Yeah, I loved watching the plays that you invented with the kids.
You have no idea how much work that was. We have a man back here who knows very well, Ben. Yeah, Ben knows. Yeah, that was a whole second job. Yeah. Thank you though. Yeah.
I was baptized in a Billings church at the age of 12. I got the Bible to prove it. But I was challenged. I was a truck driver and I was extremely good at it, so they made me a teacher. I'm going like, okay, I understand now how hard it is to be a teacher because you got to put in words what you just do. And so that was a whole new perspective on the teachers that I probably didn't make real happy. Where am I going with this? Sometimes if I get started on a subject, 2 hours later I'm done, but usually it's up here in my head. I started in on my daughter one day about how important it was. The only one thing that a parent is here for is to introduce your children to Christ. Of course, 2 hours later, she realized, Dad, are you going to do another lecture? I go, well, okay. I'll back down a little bit, but yeah, she goes, you should be a preacher. I'm going like, no, I'm a truck driver. That's what I've always wanted to be ever since I was probably 10 years old. I wanted to be a truck driver. I heard you say that in the cafeteria one time. Yeah. You're not lying. So anyway, I had this student, a Mormon student, very difficult fella, but he challenged me because he started trying to turn me into a Mormon, and of course my mom was strongly against that, had books to prove it. And he asked me a question, and I do not know what that question was or where it came from. I go, that's not in the Bible. And he goes, prove it. I had to walk downtown because I think we were in Pennsylvania someplace. I looked up in the phone book where a bookstore was. I went down there, I found a Bible, and I still have it, but I went through that thing, concordances and everything. I mean, I had to prove this guy wrong. Well, that was my beginning.
You could have been that student when you were here. That would have been. Okay. Who else had a Vern?
My name is Vern Biloff. I was here for a few years, not as a student, but as a principal and vice principal of this school. There's a book I'm going to recommend to all of you. It's called Seventh-day Adventism and the American Dream by Bolin Lockhart. It has been updated. It was first published, I believe, in '68, but it has been updated. It's an excellent book. It talks about how Seventh-day Adventism is generational. And the strongest generation in Seventh-day Adventist is the second generation. First generation is baptized into the church, and the second generation becomes very close and tied to the church. The third generation usually follows, but by the time you reach the fourth and fifth generation, there are very few Adventists left. And there's a reason for that. And probably the biggest reason that is pointed out in the book is that there's not enough glue in the fundamental Seventh-day Adventist doctrines to hold generation after generation in the church. So maybe Adventists need to think about more than just doctrinal issues. Education helps a lot. We lose about 50 to 60% of all children born into the Adventist church. They're gone. If they go to our schools, we keep a lot more within the church. But I just thought I'd mention the book. You can't buy it at the ABC, but you can get it online. Seventh-day Adventist and the American Dream.
Yeah, it's published by Oxford University Press. It's a very serious study sociologically. One thing it does say is that education keeps us together. It also changes. In my family example, and it's just everybody's family. I mean, in this study, my grandparents were Mennonite, or they were chaotic. My grandfather, one of them, was so adamant about religion that he changed his mind every week. So Adventism was a relief to actually have a creed that you could stick by. But his children, 14 of his children, every one of them went to college because of Adventist schools. And Adventist schools are an amazing organization, what they do. But my father became a physician. He was a child of manual laborers. Because he became a physician, he was more affluent, and he sent us all to college. They had 9 children. We all went to Adventist colleges. But because we're in Adventist colleges, our kids start looking around at other places. So my son and many of my nieces and nephews all went to Ivy League schools because they wanted to keep advancing. They wanted to keep learning more. They learned the love of learning. So many of them still call themselves Adventists, but they aren't the same kind of Adventists that the rest of us were. Education is both an adherent and a vector out in some ways too. Yeah.
While I work with the children in India, I've learned one thing. Don't tell them what to do. Listen to them and hear them and let them choose what they want in life. And a lot of the kids choose to follow Christ because they have the love that they are shown through action. It's not by forcing something or pushing something on them, but with love, with grace, and with kindness, you reach many more people that way. And I think so often our Adventist church, we become judgmental. We find fault with everything everybody's doing, and we don't just let it be God in our lives. And I think the other thing that we have to understand is a lot of times we think it should be one way. But Jesus, when he was on this earth, he was a completely radical man. He did nothing that the priests and the Sadducees and the people wanted him to do. He was completely opposite. And maybe we need to take that as an Adventist group of people saying, you know what? I don't have to be what they want me to be. I need to be what Jesus wants me to be. And I think that's been what I've tried in the last few years.
You know, one of the things I have to tell one very short story. My 4-year-old son, before we moved from here, would look at the sky and think Jesus was in an airplane, and he'd say, "Hi, Jesus," whenever they went by. And Steve Chin, who was the pastor here for a while, said, "At the end of my sermon, I'm going to show you Jesus." And Seth was back there, and he was so excited that he was going to see Jesus. He could barely contain himself. And then they pulled the curtains back, and there was that classic painting of Jesus, and he started crying because he really, really wanted to know who Jesus was. Well, in endeavoring to talk about Jesus as a way of living, a way of seeing the world, a way of nature, that took a little more work. But I'll never forget that when he was showing a literal painting of something, that was not what he thought Jesus was at all. And I think that continues to be true. Yeah.
Gary Emerson, class of 73. So I appreciate all of you sharing your story. And the question's an interesting question, but I'd like to ask this question. Why are we worried about it? Do we think that only Adventists are going to be in heaven? So why are we worried about it? Did Jesus ask the criminal on the cross that was next to him, well, do you believe the 28 principles? So when you said, David, it's my relationship with God that I'm worried about, that's where I'm at. I don't care if somebody goes to the Adventist church. I don't care. Do I appreciate that I'm an Adventist? Yes, I do. I love every minute that I spent here. Mount Ellis Academy changed my life. It set the tone for where my life has gone and been, and I'd go back in a minute. But when I hear discussions like this, I just ask myself, why are we asking this question? You know, so I just have to say, I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters. I think the only thing that matters is where I'm at with Christ and where somebody else that we have the opportunity to share Christ with, where they go from there.
I didn't intend to talk very much, and I'm doing too much, but I have to tell you something Vern said when I was teaching here. He was a remarkable principal, and what Vern went through with his family and so forth has been an example to me of grace all my life since that time. But I remember one time, Vern, you said, I don't know why we can't tell children that their adolescent activities, their thinking, their sexuality, their behavior is all because we have a community, and we have to be safe in this community. It isn't about Jesus. And we tell people it's about Jesus. But it's about keeping a community, and that's important. And places like this can be remarkably important. But to take the idea of Jesus doesn't like you to hold hands with that girl, that doesn't make very much sense. But it gets mixed up all the time in the way people deal with each other. And so I think that's one thing people end up resenting in some form or other. Yeah. Shelley Curtis Weaver.
I don't even have to say who I am. No, I am Shelley. Class of 81 is a 45, I think, right? I was thinking question you asked earlier about what's the what's the experience of the esoteric of knowing Jesus. And I was thinking also at the same time about this whole idea of Adventists are people of the Word. And I know that for my grandparents and great-grandparents who first came into the church, as Vern was mentioning, that being, not necessarily the strongest generation. They're the ones that just come in. But the Bible, the Word, was a puzzle for them. They could search out this number of days. They could calculate this. They could figure out what the beasts all were. It was a tremendous puzzle. What happened for me, because I had a mother who loved reading and took me to the bookmobile at the Tuella, Utah Army Depot when I was 4, was that I came into the Word looking for the stories. And so, though I definitely read all the details, knew all the characters, and by the time especially you go through church school and academy, you probably know more Bible than most Americans by far. It was the stories that were always captivating, and what became captivating within that were the stories of Jesus. And that came a little bit loaded because one of the messages of the church when I was young was that we were people of the whole Bible. We didn't carry around, literally I was lectured by different teachers during my childhood about how we don't carry around that little New Testament with Psalms because we're the people of the whole word. And it's important to know, the commandments and all of those teachings and stories. And I'm grateful for them because those are tremendous stories too. But when it came to what connected me to a relationship with Jesus in that term that we use, one of the things was the teaching of Jesus that everything we do for one another is doing that for him. And I think that by far, it's not just an Adventist thing. We have this view of humanity as terrible, wretched, sinful, fallen, innately evil. We have that entire construct that's part of many faiths and beliefs. But it didn't make sense to me. As a teenager sitting in this school where I'd always been taught there are good people and there are bad people. And you'd have some kid that was a rowdy kid, and you'd work in the cafeteria with him or her, and you'd find out all these wonderful things about them that made them special and unique and compelling. And I think one of the things we have not taught, and one of the reasons I wonder if the church has not been able to evolve and progress in a way that is meaningful and has enough glue for the other generations, is this view we've had that Jesus is distant and we have to get to know him through a magical, mystical experience that, yeah, we may have had, but is hard to describe, is a struggle to describe, instead of the expectation that Jesus is in all those around us. The delightful, amazing complexity of humanity is how we know him and how we have that relationship and what we do in relationship, as Penny was saying, to the people in need and the people not in, nobody really is not in need, because even our friends, our neighbors, our peers are going through, that unseen battle that everyone has. And that also changed, largely probably because I was an English major, my view of what was sacred word as well. That so many other writings, and not just the Christian writings, contain those stories of humanity that become revelations of God. And I'm not saying that these are the things that command our lives necessarily, because I'm not sure even where the Bible is concerned, some of those stories are things I want to emulate and pull into my life. But just the realization that these stories reveal so much of the image of God that still certainly, surely must be present in us all, that's the basis of Jesus saying he will know who he knows in the end, is how we relate to that. And it's been something that as I work and write and think, I want to make a place within Adventism for all those different people, for people of different sexual identities, gender identities, beliefs about science, beliefs about whatever. Because if we are really people of the word, then we also are people of the image of God in all humanity. And having a welcoming place has to be the next step of evolution if more of our kids are going to find that glue.
Maybe two more, and then we probably should keep talking.
Hi, I'm Greg Smith from class of 78. Divert Billoff was one of my favorites. I still see your orange Wheaties sweatpants for basketball. I think I love this place. I grew up here. Bim and I went to school here from 3rd grade. Um, you know, yeah, Henry. But there were too many rules. There were too many. My senior year, we had Ken Alexander do a week of prayer. And at the end, he gave a call. We all remember the calls. And he said, for those of you who don't stand up, go to the library. Half the people went to the library. You know, there's too much. What Gary said is so. What does it matter? It's believe on the Lord Jesus Christ and thou shalt be saved. We put so many rules and stipulations on what Penny and Mel. Good night, Mel. How many times did I shovel us out of the mud and stand on the side of the Jeep on Sabbath and hang on to the front of your camper looking out the window thinking, am I going to live through this? But that's not work. My family has the greatest memories of hanging out with Anderson Friday night, Saturday night, singing with Bobby and Sharon, and, you know, riding in Mel's Jeep and in his camper, and Dan and Odita Davis and those guys. Those are what we remember the most. And I love this, but I was a horrible student, as you probably can presume. But I mean, we get extra recess to Bim and help me with spelling. Yeah, but I loved it here, and it's an experience. I'd love to come back here. I came back here and worked for Joe, one of the greatest experiences in my life, you know. But anyway.
One little thing to that. I think all these rules, what they taught us, and you could verify this, is they taught us how to bend the rules, right? Because I remember on Sabbath, we couldn't play cowboys and Indians, but we could play like missionaries and natives. And we had to tell our folks we were doing that kind of stuff. So I think it really taught us to kind of bend things because there were so many rules. And it just, you know, as I've gotten older, I've decided it's all about love. That's what it is. It comes down to that. And like Gary said, it's, you know, Adventist or not, Christian or not. Kevin Brissett is an amazing friend. I see him a lot out in Portland. And he invites people to his concerts. And you could go get a red cup, and they have beer, they have water, they have soda. And you put whatever you want in it, and there's no judging. And he has a lot of atheists that come to see him and a lot of Christians. So I think it's a beautiful thing because we're all in this world to struggle. I mean, we're struggling and to find ourselves. Anyway.
Don't any of you think of yourself as bad students. The reason for that is, I mean, I see your faces and I learned stuff. I watched you get a softball over the fence, and I mimicked your swing, and I got so I could do it. You know, thank you. You taught me something.
What I hear tonight really confirms what I've thought for a long time. We're more like disciples who followed Jesus. We learned from him, part of that community. And I'll be damned, I hate the corporate church.
The corporate church isn't made for us right now. It's made for people in Africa and other places. done a lot of changes. Yeah.
I forgot that I had gotten a message, kind of like you did from Ernie, from another friend of mine that couldn't be here tonight. And she said some belief systems, religious or otherwise, can create an atmosphere where people feel they have to perform, prove themselves, or meet certain standards just to belong. That kind of pressure shuts down real connection. It makes people feel like they're on the outside looking in. What I've discovered in my own journey is something very different. My foundation is this: every person matters. Every person carries deep value. Every person is worthy of love. That is the lens I live in. For me, Jesus is the one who revealed that truth and anchored it in my life. Others may describe it differently, but the heart of it is the same: a love that restores, lifts, and welcomes.
Good. Okay, good. Well, thank you very much. Oh, David, sure.
Thank you, Dan. You mentioned the church before the 28 fundamental beliefs. I remember being in the dorm over here and reading an article about the Adventist church being pushed hard to take a stand on abortion. And the refusal is that that's not what we're about. We're about spreading the gospel. So we're not going to do that. I like that. I sat right back here on those theater seats and had a discussion with a pastor preparing to baptize me. And we went through 10 or 13 beliefs. And I said, yes, yes, no, no, maybe, no, yes. And he said, well, I can't baptize you then. I said, why not? Well, you don't believe all the beliefs of the church. I said, are you baptizing me into Christ or into the church? I said, I'll have to think about it. To his credit, Larry McGill went and thought about it. And he came back in a couple of weeks and he said, okay, I'll baptize you. And we dammed up the creek behind Dan's house, and Patty and I were baptized back there. Somehow, my church membership ended up at Boulder, where my mom went to church, and it's followed me around for the 50 years since. I'm still a member of the church. I've been asked and encouraged many times to become a pastor in the church, and I have always said, I think it's fine for a layman to be at odds with the church, but if I'm going to stand up in front and be paid by the church to represent the church as a pastor, I need to be fully sold out to the whole thing. And I'm not. So I have, over the last 30 years, asked a lot of people, why do you come to church? Why are you here? Why are you an Adventist? And we've had some discussions on Facebook. We've had some discussions on phones and face-to-face. And there are two books I do recommend to you. One strongly, Graham Maxwell's Can God Be Trusted, which is no longer in general print, but if you contact Pine Knolls, they'll ship you however many you want. And they cost just making the request. The other one is an interesting discussion. It's called Saving Jesus from the Church. And it's not about the Adventist church specifically, but it raises the issue. Somehow Jesus came and he said, follow me, as in do what I do, which was point people to the Father. He talked about the kingdom. He talked about the Father. And somehow that got switched to worship Jesus. Following him is a lot of work. Let's just worship him instead. And then we get to the questions of, are you worshiping right? Are you a member of the right group? And I really like your point about community, that I guess both of you make. All those rules are about community, how we're going to live here. I remember reading the commands in the Old Testament. If this happens in your community, don't let this flourish. Kill them. Oh, stone them. Yeah, that sounds nicer. Whole community, stone these people who do this. Sounds terrible. But what happens when you let those things flourish in your community? It destroys your community. Seems to make more sense now. But that's about the community, not about salvation. It's been said a few times. Salvation, if that's the point, let's focus on that, and let's talk about building community. Community is wonderful. When I was raising my great-grandkids for a few years, I brought them to Adventist schools and Sabbath school. There are times I cringe at what I hear in Sabbath school. And times I say, this is wonderful. I have to look at the result. Coming here saved my life, literally and spiritually. Sitting up here on the floor in Afterglow, having a discussion with Dan Lamberton, created a connection. He invited me to a group that was meeting at his house. My life is still here. So thank you. The community here that we all love, I haven't heard anybody say, oh, it was so great not being able to wear certain things, or it was so great to not be able to hold hands, or the rules weren't it, but the connections. And I think if we get to wanting, and I asked the same question, people said, well, in this situation, run to Jesus. I'm with Seth, where is he? I'll run to him. What's that mean? But when I can connect with people, and whoever's around us, like Shelley said, this is who Jesus is. I can connect with you. I can talk with you. I can hear you. And we can worship God and get to know God. Decide if we trust him or not.
Well, I'm going to tell you two quick things about alumni. Peter Dudar, who was Donnie Dudar, I think, when he was here. An amazing young man who worked for years in Los Angeles to make what he called Arlington West, which was the cemetery for everybody killed in Iran and Iraq. And he put crosses on the beaches of Los Angeles to commemorate what was going on so that people knew what was happening. They could see them. But more than that, even he moved to Ecuador and he feeds, do any of you hear from him besides me? He feeds about 12,000 people a week sandwiches. He has a sandwich ministry. And if you want to know how to get a hold of him, how to support it. But when Jesus says, in as much as you've done it to the least of these, you've done it to me, that's a contradictory thing, because as soon as you think of that, those people are not the least anymore. In as much as you've done it to people, you've done it to me. And finally, an example of that, right now I'm working really hard over at Upper Columbia Academy to get them to recognize that there are 351 people from the Spokane Poor Farm buried on their campus with no recognition of who they are. And so right now we're working to let people know that they are living among the least of these, right there. And it's an opportunity for a tremendous reawakening of what the real mission is of a place like this. So that's what we heard tonight, and I'm really grateful to you. And if any of you have any other things you'd like to say, please do. Otherwise, would you?
Will you please bow your heads for prayer with me? Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the family that we have in Mount Ellis Academy. Thank you so much for just being present in our lives, and help us to always look to you and to get our guidance and our direction from you. Thank you for just giving us this community and for the abundant blessings. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thanks so much. And again, remember, if you do want to tell a story to share with people about why I prefer stories to theory, Dan Lamberton at Gmail, and I will assemble them and put them together. And if you just want to tell it and don't want it publicized, just say so. But yeah, I would. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Gene. Yeah. Good. I just wanted to say one thing, Gary, to your question of why you asked the question. And the answer, part of the answer is because we can ask the question. A healthy organization can ask hard questions about themselves. And if you want a sick organization, never question them, or you'll be in trouble, because they are of supreme authority and you don't question that. But if you have the right to question and ask questions, that's a healthier organization. And one of the reasons we ask the question is we don't want any alumni to feel alienated. We want them to be able to come back to Alumni Weekend and know that we accept them. We just want to see them. We don't judge them. They were our friends. They're still our friends. We want them here, and we want to learn how to better make them feel welcome. And that's kind of why we asked the question in the first place. But one quick story. A friend of mine who was a class member, Bob Hansen, I don't know if you remember him. He was always hot and cold. He was a member of the Temperance Club, and he was on fire one moment, and the next moment he was just throw it all away. And it was, I wondered why, what was that about? And his sister, Renee Hansen, said, well, we all grew up in a foster home. And his foster parents had a box, and they put it by the door. And whenever he was bad or misbehaved, he was supposed to put one article of clothing in the box. And when that box became full, he was supposed to leave. That was the theory anyway. Behavior modification was the principle. But what it did to him was everything depends on my performance. And so many rules are dependent upon your performance. And how many people misperform or are unable to perform. I wasn't able to get all A's. Am I okay if I get C's? Am I still, am I going to be successful in life if I get C's and not all A's? Or D's? I got D's. I never got a tattoo, but I got D's. So I think asking the question is a healthy thing. And hopefully we can be open and honest, because that's what we need to be with each other and with God. God didn't say, I want you to be the best Adventist you can possibly be. He wants you to be open and honest. And there's a reason that the Pharisees didn't like Jesus. And they said, well, you're hanging out with all the sinners. Well, those sinners felt that they weren't judged, they were being accepted, and their lives were being changed. And it's as a people, as Adventists, if we are more like Jesus in that, rather than the 28 fundamental beliefs, and you must get all A's, or you must be a certain way. I went to a Bible conference. This is my last story. Went to a Bible conference, and he gave a description of how I felt. And he said, it's like God and the devil are playing musical beanbags. When you do something good, The devil doesn't want you, and he tosses you over to Jesus. And when you do something bad, Jesus doesn't want you, and he tosses you back to the devil. And whosever hands you happen to be in at the close of time, that's your eternal destiny. But he said, reading from Romans, nothing can separate you from the love of God. And the light went on. And it's like, oh, it's not about whether I do something good, whether I do something bad. Nothing's going to separate me from the love of God. Nothing. Not height, not depth, not width, not this, not that. Nothing. And I was fortunate to have gone to that Bible conference. Not everybody in the school was able to go, but it was pivotal in my relationship with God. And that's all I'll say about that. But if this was helpful, this was beneficial, and you'd like to see this happen again at an alumni weekend, we can continue this discussion or another discussion. And as this was the beginning.